Welcome to the Network Table Podcast. Here's your host, Luke Van Every.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Network Table Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Van Every, and thank you so much for being with us today. I'm extremely excited about our attendee today. He is an absolute incredible human being doing some incredible work. He's in the same industry that we are. We have a lot of synergy, so I wanted to bring him on. Let's get to know him. Erich, what's going on?
I'm doing all right, Luke. How are you?
Wait. Who are you? The Erich I know has this hefty, majestic beard about yay long. What is going on?
Yes, that was the Erich as of about a couple of weeks ago, and for the past 14 months, actually, as it turns out, that was a pandemic project, and now that I am fully vaccinated, I couldn't justify keeping the pandemic beard, and so now I'm back to the Erich that I had known previously. It feels good. It honestly feels good. I miss it, but
I went to the same. If you looked at my LinkedIn right now, I still have the picture. I can't give up the picture of my majestic beard as you had. But it came to that point. I was home with my dad. He was like, "Luke, you own your own company. The beard's got to go." I'm like, "Well, no, I like it." And he was like, "No, it's got to go." And then mom chirped in, and the wife had been so we got rid of it. So I understand.
My wife for so long said, you know what, it's probably about time, it's been a good run, but it needs to come off. I have a hard time making decisions, but I finally made one, shaved it off, and she looked at me and she was kind of sad about it. She's like, I miss the beard. I'm like, I finally make a decision about this and I'm not being supported here. I need your full support because this has been hard enough as it is.
That's life, is it not? Well, Erich, thank you so much for being here with us today. Tell us, what do you do?
So I do a number of things, but primarily I help companies and consultants leverage the DISC personality assessment. That is, I'm a big DISC nerd. I come by it honestly, and organizations that want to grow teams that value effective communication with diverse personality styles, I facilitate those conversations and I connect them with the resources that they need to make that happen. I also build HR community. I have an HR community called HR Hot Seat, bring HR folks together for all kinds of conversations. And then, the time that all leaves over, I spend public speaking. I'm often on stage at conferences or standing here in front of Zoom and speaking with audiences about things that often revolve around the meaningful work of human resources, leadership skills, soft skills, and how we communicate with each other and do our best work.
All very important work. I'm sure you're excited to get back to doing some in-person speaking.
I am. Yeah, it's been too long. As somebody who identifies as being more on the introverted side of things, I've really embraced sort of these virtual conversations and being able to turn on a computer and then turn it off at the end of a discussion and go sit on the couch for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like many other people, I'm chomping at the bit to get into a room of folks and really feed off of that energy because there's nothing like it.
I think we all are. I think we all need some human interaction. I don't think the virtual world's ever going to go away. I think we've all become more comfortable with turning the camera on, but that's my opinion. So let's go back a little bit to the DISC. Talk to us about that to somebody who doesn't understand what the DISC is.
So DISC is one of the world's most popular personality assessments. It's been referred to as a behavioral assessment, but it gets at your natural preferences and tendencies in the workplace, the environments in which you do your best work, and the communication style that comes most naturally to you, how you prefer that you communicate with other people, but that also that they communicate with you. And DISC is used by, thousands of companies worldwide. Millions of people have completed the assessment, and it's allowing people to better understand themselves, get enhance their self-awareness, but then also connect more effectively and meaningfully with their colleagues and their stakeholders. So if I'm working with you, I better understand you. If we are trying to serve an external customer, how can we better do that by better understanding what we need as part of this conversation from each other.
I need words of affirmation. Good job goes a long way with me. I played sports my entire life. I took direction. Luke, this is what you do. Went out and did it. Got told good job. And guess what I wanted to do? Wanted to go do it again.
Right.
But that's just who I am. And I'm sure you're out helping the world show, everybody is different and everybody needs different direction and different help and different ways to be communicated.
There's a conversation going on now, a very important one around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And our communication style and work preferences are often referred to as cognitive diversity. Those aspects of diversity that aren't as easily seen or quantified. And so I come along and say, you know what, let's have a really valuable conversation about what we need from each other and how we communicate and how those differences are so important when it comes to building an effective team.
I'm 100% on board. I believe it. So let's go to the HR hot seat. Tell us a little bit about that. Who's involved? What do you got going on? How long have you been doing it as well?
HR Hot Seat came around about 5 years ago. We're coming up on our 5th birthday celebration, potentially this August. And thank you. I, at the time, was starting my own business. I had come out of the corporate HR world for 15 or 16 years there and was flexing my networking muscles, trying to figure out how to do that. As an introvert, I never really cared much for networking. It just wasn't something that appealed to me. And so I went out and about, and what I was seeing was kind of superficial and transactional in different ways, and some of it was certainly valuable, but in other ways it just wasn't as rewarding to me as it could have been. So I thought, you know what? I want to create the community that I would want to be a part of as an introvert, where we can really connect meaningfully, get to know one another as HR professionals. My goal was honestly, Luke, to bring 10 or 12 HR professionals together on a regular basis to tackle common challenges. That was my goal for the community. And I thought, well, that's bite-sized, it's accessible, that's something that I can pull off. Now, almost 5 years later, we have thousands of members in 11 different chapters around the country.
Wow.
And
5 years?
5 years.
Thousands?
Thousands of members, 11 chapters. And we're not doing anything, I would say, even terribly innovative. I think what we're doing is giving HR professionals a professional networking home that they've always wanted, a safe, confidential, non-commercial space to come together and tackle common challenges, to blow off steam about how difficult the work of human resources can be, to be inspired to do their best work, and, oftentimes, most importantly, to connect with the resources to do that work. To maybe they're a department of one, maybe they're relatively new in their HR role. Who else is out there that's doing this work that I can connect with? But who are those service providers, potentially, vendors, folks who exist to serve me and help me do my work more effectively? And throw that all in the mix. We have a really good time. We really enjoy ourselves. Entirely virtual these days, but yep. At some point we'll be back together face to face.
How often is HR hot seat meeting?
So it's different depending on the chapter that you belong to. I personally facilitate the one that we started with, which is our Chicago chapter. It's our largest and our oldest at this point. And we come together once a month. We're seeing between 60 and maybe 120 folks on Zoom. At the end of a long day on Zoom, they're coming back together for a couple of hours because they see so much value in the conversation that we have. And that's really exciting to me.
A night meeting. So I've had this debate a few times of when is the best time? Do you do it in the morning? Do you do it in the middle of the day? Do you do it at night? I think all very valuable times. Mm-hmm. Why at night for you?
So I didn't want people to have to escape the work that they were doing to attend something that I was doing. I didn't want them to have to carve out time in the middle of a day when there are other things sort of vying for their attention. And there's plenty of other networking that can be done during the day. A lot of organizations have breakfast stuff over lunch, and I've hosted conversations in those time periods as well. What I decided when we were face to face is if I could host an event downtown Chicago, which is where I am, and have people come over after work, and sort of leave work behind, come to what we're doing, connect with other folks in the hours immediately following work, that was going to be the space that I wanted to fill. And it caught on. People really enjoyed that they could walk over after work, and then they'd get on public transportation or get in the car and head home once it was all said and done for the evening.
Right. It's great. I love it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a big group once a month. Congratulations on that in just
Thank
5 years. And you said 5 years ago you were starting your own business alongside this, which is insane in its own. What was the trigger? What led up? What'd you do before you were like, all right, it's time for me to go out? What were you doing before leading up? What was your story up until that?
So that's, those were my days as a corporate HR professional. I worked for an amazing company based here in Chicago called Levy Restaurants. They do sports and entertainment food service all around the country. So almost any basketball, football, NASCAR, any sporting event, any conference center that you may have gone to, Levy is likely behind the scenes or not so behind the scenes providing the food service. And it was really exciting. My role had really been built up around me. It really catered to so many of what I thought were my strengths as an HR professional. And along the way, I started working with the DISC personality assessment. That was one of the things that I did as an HR generalist, and I fell in love with it, which is a very nerdy thing to say, by the way. Of all the things to fall in love with, a personality assessment, right? But I was a psychology major in school, and I just always loved, thinking about what makes people tick, why they do what they do, how they enter into relationships, why they avoid others. And it really kind of sort of grew on me. And in the background, I thought, I wonder if I could do something more with this. I wonder if I'm wired to be a small business owner, an entrepreneur. And 5 years later, Luke, I'm still trying to answer that same question.
Yeah. I don't think it ever actually goes away. Back to the nerd part, I think being called a nerd or being a nerd is a positive thing now. And I will debate that with anybody. It used to be you're a nerd and it was a bad. Now, if somebody calls me a nerd, I'm like, thanks. Thank you very much.
I'll take it.
Knowledge is power. If you want to call me a nerd because I'm smart, perfect. Bring it on. So that is, what's that initial thought? Like, all right, it's time. This is great, but it's time for me to be an entrepreneur. How do you take that leap? Who do you call? Do you call anybody, or you say, you know what, I just got to do it? What was the trigger to make this is my time?
That was one of the hardest things for me. Erich Kurschat does not make decisions quickly. And so honestly, I started it on the side. You call it a side hustle, whatever terminology you want to use. I decided, okay, I was fully transparent about the whole thing. I wasn't keeping this a secret from my employer at the time, but I started it on the side. And it took a couple of years, because I had to determine, is this something that I can do? Is it something I want to do? Do I have the bandwidth for it? Some people have an idea, they cut ties, they transition, and they're doing the new thing. I needed that overlap to determine if it was the right direction. It took me a couple of years. My first official gig under the name Harmony Insights, which is my company, was in the suburbs here of Chicago. Exciting enough. I thought, okay, this gives me some evidence that there's something to this. My second and third gigs were in Geneva, Switzerland. And that's when I realized there's a market for this. If my second and third gigs could be, by the luck of the draw, in Geneva, Switzerland, what more is possible? And at that point, I think my mind was made up. I just had to figure out how to make that transition work. And There hasn't been a day that's gone by that I haven't missed the corporate perks that I used to enjoy. But being in work, business for myself, doing the work that I get to do now is just immensely both challenging and rewarding, as I think you can attest yourself.
100%. Did you get to go to Switzerland for those gigs?
I was there. Yeah, I flew over. One was during the summer, so I got to facilitate a disc workshop and enjoy Lake Geneva and that surrounding area. And then the second time I was out there, um, previously with the goal of returning to ski out west, I was then skiing in the Swiss Alps and thinking, how can I do more of this?
Yeah. Yes. I want to state for the record, if Geneva, Switzerland is listening and you need global PO, I require in-person meetings to help Geneva, Switzerland.
At that point, I would have been happy with any business anywhere. Cleveland would have been exotic for me, being a small business owner. Nothing against Cleveland. I love Cleveland, but
not much skiing there, though.
the point is that it's closer and right, not much skiing. But then suddenly I'm in the Swiss Alps and just thought, if this is possible, if this is part of what being a small business owner could be, I want to explore that. I want to do more with it. Now to add to this, because I think it was part of your question, you said, who did you call?
Yeah.
Ghostbusters were not on the list.
Nope.
I don't know why I had to make the joke, but the Ghostbusters were not on the list. But the list was honestly smaller than it should have been, because as an introvert who was happily employed for 16 years, I spent no time nurturing a network. I didn't have a LinkedIn profile to speak of. I wasn't doing much networking. And at the time that I most needed it, transitioning into my own business, I didn't have one in place. And figuring out how to do that and do it effectively, and the value that a strong professional network can bring, and the value you can bring to a strong professional network, has been one of the most eye-opening aha moments of this entire journey.
So, starting my own business, I don't have a LinkedIn profile. I don't network. So I'm going to start my own business and my own networking event.
Right.
Getting this correct?
You are. Yeah, it was a bit rocky to begin with.
That is incredible. That's awesome.
And doing it all as an introvert. And that's not a knock against introverts, but it's to say that some of this stuff didn't come naturally to me. I didn't see the obvious value in it. I had to figure out how to do it in a way that worked for me. And that's been the journey ever since. It's been dancing with the what's the terminology? The imposter syndrome. Knowing that I wanted to do this very meaningful work, and I wanted to use different titles and different ways of describing my business that I had never used before. And who said that I could do these things to begin with? Like, what right did I have calling myself a coach or a facilitator? Like, none, right? So then struggling against that, and then building this community in the meantime, and then getting out there and, doing the disc work that I wanted to do, all happened concurrently. And I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Oh, I love it. You practice what you preach. You found something that you love, but you weren't an expert in it, and made yourself an expert in it, and just never gave up.
Right.
Can't give up.
And to this day, I'm still, you use the word expert, and I've played around with that too. That doesn't feel right. So maybe today I don't use it, and tomorrow I will. But the journey of meaningful work is, if nothing else, it's iterative. It's something that looks different on a day-to-day basis. I've heard it said that, once you enter into a relationship, you get married, for example, you have to wake up every day and recommit to the person that you're waking up with, because that person is different and you are different than you were the day before. I think the same thing can be said for running a small business or doing work of any sort. You have to wake up every day and recommit to it, because you are a different person and that work is different. Your audience is different. The market is different. And if you don't embrace that inherent change, it's only a matter of time before you become irrelevant or you burn out.
Yep.
And I
Burnout.
don't want either of those things.
That's the one. The burnout is the one that I've struggled with. And 2020, like we can debate or we could talk about the bad in 2020 all day, every day, forever. But some of the good that came out of 2020 was the pivot. The ones that were like, all right, it's time to pivot. It's time to change. I know some people even got tired of hearing me say pivot, and I get it. And shout out to Friends for their reunion last night. A bunch of pivot stuff on there for all my friends. But the ones that exactly what you just said were able to adapt and able to change and able to hold it together and pivot were the ones that are still here. And you, my friend, are one of those. So with that, 2020 was tough. What was the most positive thing that changed you or you took out of this last 18 months?
I love these questions. I could feel like I could talk with you all day. Um, a couple of things. You said the most, the most impactful or the biggest takeaway, but there are a couple of things that immediately come to mind. Number one was um, embracing the possibility that what could be done face to face can be done virtually. I think that's sort of a universal challenge or takeaway for people. It doesn't mean that you love it necessarily. It doesn't mean you're always going to do it, but it can be done. And by the way, could have always been done. I mean, these platforms had been around long before COVID, but it took a pandemic for us to really embrace what's possible virtually.
Yep.
I think that was a big piece of it. And then sort of related to that was within the first few months of the pandemic when nobody was interested in disc. People were looking to find toilet paper and hoard it, apparently. And then also to figure out homeschooling and whether or not they're going to keep their jobs, things that were much more important than anything that I was doing with disc. Business fell off entirely. And I had to figure out then how I was going to spend my time. And the lesson that I took from that pivot was the value in nurturing relationships. I had to come to terms with the fact that I wasn't necessarily going to earn a paycheck facilitating a disc conversation, but there was going to be something much more important at the time that I was going to be able to do for people. And it was to bring them together in a safe space to have very important conversation and to connect meaningfully with one another. And that has always been the through line. I don't know about always. It is a long held through line in the work that I do, is this idea of meaningful connection and meaningful conversation. And I had to set aside disc for a while and say, you know what do we need to talk about? Is it diversity and inclusion? Is it the struggle to keep and maintain our jobs? Is it the struggle that HR professionals face letting go of people and firing people that they would love to keep around? Is it mental health? Is it the health of our family members that we can't help but bring with us to the workplace, because the workplace is our home for a lot of us now? And that work-life balance, personal, professional self is more intertwined than it's ever been. And nurturing those relationships, facilitating that sort of meaningful conversation, while it didn't always bring in a paycheck, ended up being the most important thing I think that I did over the course of the past year in a couple of months.
Yeah, one thing on that you said was, the office is your home, right? I've realized over time that the gym and the office were two places where I have met some of the best human beings in my life ever. And I didn't realize they were just always there and we connected, but the connection wasn't made, that I spoke to these human beings more than I did my family. I had a bad day and they could tell just from my emotion, and we would talk about it. We would have lunch, we would have a coffee, we would work out together. And now that I'm out on my own, it's like, I love being my own boss and I love being able to help people the way that I want to help them, but I do miss having those individuals around me for those days that I need them around me.
Yeah.
Right. So I 100% agree with that. The office can be your home.
It's being more cognizant, I think, of your support system, but being intentional about it. And that comes back to sort of the mastermind style conversation that we have at HR Hot Seat. The idea behind a mastermind is that you are intentional about who those people are. But too often we're going through life. Jim Rohn and other people said, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And sometimes those 5 people are just convenient. They just happen to be the people that are that you happen to be near, and hopefully, they're the people you would want to have near, and that you love them dearly, and vice versa. But if you sprinkle in a little intentionality then, and you begin to understand that, okay, I can choose those people. Like I can choose to have them be the people at the gym, or I can choose to have them be the people that I work with. That is my personal sounding board, my own personal board of directors, I guess. That changes everything. You appreciate them in different ways, you seek their advice in different ways, you make yourself available to them in ways that you may not have considered. That intentionality really can be a game changer.
Yeah, when it was my time to make my phone calls, there was 10 people that I called and said, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking." And I straight up told them, I was like, "Listen, I need your advice." I mean, we were colleagues and we were friends. We'd never had a conversation like this. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make these phone calls because I need this. I need this help. I need this reassurance. And I told him, I was like, this is why I'm calling you. I need help and I need reassurance. I need you to give it to me straight. This is a stupid idea. I'm wasting my time. I need you to tell me this stupid idea and I'm wasting my time. Or just give me your advice. And all of them were like, cons, pros. The cons list is very small, Luke. It's you, and I got your back.
Yeah.
And that was the time. That was when, because I was beginning to start my business, but I was still taking interviews on the side. I had that unsure voice in my head. Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? You're walking away from a 6-figure salary. You're going to, all your money is into this. And those individuals around me were why I was comfortable enough to say, hey, I got this support system around me and I'm going to go for it.
Yeah. I love that for a couple of reasons. Number one, it required you to be vulnerable. And anyone who's ever read anything by Brene Brown or listened to her talk, she talks a lot about vulnerability. And you were able to be vulnerable with these people. My guess is because you trusted them. You knew that they could provide you with a pros list, they could provide you with a cons list, and you would still be friends. That it wasn't a personal attack if there was something that they disagreed with, that they cared enough about you to say, Luke, I don't know if you've considered this. This is a potential obstacle. But it requires you to first be vulnerable. And so many of us are too proud. I don't know what you want to call it, but if I want to present myself as an
Pride.
if you want to present yourself as an authority in a space, or as anything, worth engaging for business, to admit that there's something that you don't know or might not know or might need help with, for some people works against them. It chips away at this image that they're trying to portray. But I think you learn pretty quickly that the most effective leaders out there, the most effective business owners, the most effective HR departments, benefits departments, they are the ones that are saying, we don't yet have all of the answers. We may never have all of the answers, but we want to learn. There are things that we don't know, mistakes that we are currently making, that we don't have to make, things that we want to learn. And the only way to do that is I think, first, to be vulnerable, to keep people around, people close by that you trust, and to be intentional then about relying on those folks and leaning on them along the way when you need feedback and you need help and you need input.
Would you agree that you have to understand who not to bring on as well?
Who not to bring into your inner circle?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, either into your inner circle, to your W-2 employees, to your 1099 contract. Having a good idea, but that's hard sometimes. It takes introspection. You have to understand yourself and what you need and what you don't need, potentially. It takes understanding other people, and I think it takes also having fairly healthy boundaries. to say, this is the help that I'm looking for and the opportunities that I'm open to, and this is help that I'm not necessarily looking for and opportunities that might take up really valuable bandwidth that I need to spend on other things. um, but I think especially when you're starting a business, now that I'm reflecting on it myself, anytime anybody comes along to say, oh, I want to help you, or I want to get on your calendar for a conversation, you're jumping at it, right? Because there's so many things you want to do and so much help that you need. I think it really is a learning lesson to get to a point where you can establish those healthy boundaries and say, you know what? I don't need to take a conversation with everybody who connects with me on LinkedIn to help coaches, 10 times their revenue. I appreciate the offer. I like the idea in theory, but I'm not sure that that's the most valuable use of my time right now.
And that's that can be difficult. I still struggle with it today. I'm getting better at it, and I don't know if I'll ever be perfect at it, because I under my sales side of me kicks in. Like, I know that person is looking, and maybe they're struggling this month with a quota or or bad management, and they're just getting this pressure, and they're looking to talk to anyone. And sometimes I allow my emotions to get ahead of me
Yeah.
instead of my best interest. Is something I have to work on a lot. So let's go back to 2020. What is something that you took? What is something new that you're doing? A new hobby, a new activity, anything. What's something new that you've started doing that's been great?
That's a great question. So I will leave all of the sort of the professional virtual stuff aside, because I would say that a new hobby of mine is just collecting technology that I may or may not need, just because it's a lot of fun.
Okay.
So it's not always easy on the wallet, but that's been a fun hobby, is to say, what else can I add to my home office setup that's going to be beneficial to me going forward? We could have an entire conversation on that alone, but to set that aside, um, one of the things my wife and I have never really been much into television. I don't know if this follows from your question, but
No.
um, I think one of the things that I realized over the course of the past year is, when you're working from home, my wife is a first grade teacher, so she leaves and then comes home for most of the
Big
year.
shout out to all our teachers, all of them.
When I'm working from home, it's difficult sometimes to separate personal and professional selves. When you get on a train and go to work and come home, or get in a car and go to work and come home, you have that physical separation. Here, if there's a lull in our conversation, I can jump back on the computer. you know? So what I'm driving at here is sort of the understanding, or the recognition that our time together is very valuable, and she deserves somebody who's fully committed to her and the conversation that we have and the time that we have together, who isn't always in the back of his head thinking, if I just step back into the office, I can knock out 10 minutes of work. So one of the things then, not having being avid television watchers, that we've sort of incorporated into our quality time um, is finding something that we really get excited about, that we can sit down and watch together and get excited about together. So we will, on a fairly nightly basis, we'll make dinner, we'll enjoy dinner. And these days it's diving into whichever Marvel TV series we're most excited about. And I don't know that that's the most beneficial and productive of hobbies these days. But I think what's important to me is that it reinforces to my wife that she is important to me, and that time is for us, and it's not time where I can justify leaving her side and jumping back in front of the computer for a little bit.
That resonates with me 10 times.
Mhm.
My wife and I love watching stuff, and what's really fun is when she picks something and she'll like start it when she has downtime and I don't, and she'll get 3 episodes in. I'm like, oh, what is this? She's like, you won't like it. I'm like, she's like, but I'll start it over. We get 4 episodes in, and I'm like, oh, let's watch another one. She's like, what? No, we're going to bed. It's 11 o'clock. No, we can get one more. one more in. And she's like, I had no idea you're going to enjoy this. And we have a lot of fun each picking something to watch, a series. Our biggest problem is we'll find a series that we like and we'll watch it in 2 days and then it's just gone.
Right.
And we're like, we burned up this entire great show.
Right.
So I'm on board with watching television. I'm on board with, I tell a lot of new entrepreneurs, even though I'm a new entrepreneur myself, that relaxation is extremely important. Like, if you want to sit at your desk from 6 a.m. to 12 o'clock at night, you go right ahead. Good luck. You need to be able to control, alt, delete, and leave your seat.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it. It can wait till tomorrow. Not the most important things, but the small stuff can wait. You have to take time to rest, decompress, be with your family. The biggest thing I took out of 2020 was I spent a lot of time at home. I have 11 nieces and nephews. I've
Wow.
missed a lot of birthdays over the years. I spent a lot of time home and I realized quickly, I was like, man, I don't want to miss birthdays anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to start taking some Fridays off to go home.
Yeah.
Family is extremely important because I'm missing. I used to, my family's posting all this stuff and they're all together. And I'm just sitting here like, man, I'm missing being with my two brothers, my two sisters, my mom, my dad, and my 11 nieces and nephews. And that's not okay anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. When you said 11 nieces and nephews, I was thinking he either has a really big family or he has one sibling that just really wanted, as many children as possible.
I'm the middle of five, and my wife will tell you I am a middle child through and through, but she's an only child. So what does she know?
Your point, though, is a really good one because, and I don't even think it's just small business owners. I think anybody who really loves the work that they do may fall into this bucket. But if it wasn't for my wife having, for example, a spring break, which she has as a first grade teacher, I don't know that I would step away from the work that I do because I really do enjoy it. If given the chance between doing the work that I do and some other personal things, I'll often choose the work because it does bring me so much fulfillment. But to your point, there is such value in finding that balance, or I've come to say blend instead of balance, because I don't think it's one versus the other. I think it's blending them together. And her spring break comes up and we headed to the Smoky Mountains for a little bit and to Asheville, North Carolina, and drank some fantastic craft beer, which we both enjoy. Um, that was not only enjoyable, but it was kind of necessary, to be able to take that break. And then I came back and everything was waiting for me. I had all my computer stuff here and I had clients that were waiting to hear from me, but it didn't do me any harm to step away from that for a bit. And I'm really big on perspective, and you come back with valuable perspective on what it means to not be doing that work and what it means to shift gears and focus on the person who's supposed to be the most important person in your life, and if you can't do that, if you can't demonstrate that to your spouse in this case, I have other problems that I'm going to have to deal with.
Well, Eric, this has been absolute fantastic. If you could give one piece of advice to somebody that's on the fence, or on the fence of, is this my time to go out on my own and start my own company and do something I'm passionate about? What's the one piece of advice you would give them?
To first know yourself. I think too many people make decisions about the work that they're doing, whether it's in a traditional W-2 sense or going off on their own, because they're chasing something exciting. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Hopefully opportunity abounds, that we're surrounded by exciting things that we could be doing. I'm big on self-awareness. And I think if you don't first begin by understanding yourself, what you value, what you prioritize, what you're looking for in relationships and in meaningful work, how you define those things to begin with, what value you're going to bring to potential clients or to potential organizations. If you skip that piece and jump immediately to step two, you've missed your most important opportunity to have this be a well-informed, confident decision with lasting power, staying power. There's always going to be something exciting, right? There's always going to be something that we're either distracted by or eager to get to. take that important time to get to know yourself so that when you do chase that exciting thing, it has that much more potential to become long lasting, rewarding, fulfilling in all of the ways that you need it to be.
It's beautiful. It's incredible. That's great advice. Everyone write it down. Erich, if the listeners want to get involved in HR Hot Seat, or they want to get involved in working with you, how do we get in touch with you?
Thank you for asking, Luke. My disc business, my primary business, is at harmonyinsights.com. Harmony Insights is my company. So you can find a lot of information there. Anyone interested in HR Hot Seat, whether it's joining as a member, you don't have to be an HR professional, but you have to be committed to HR focused conversation. Maybe sponsoring what we do, maybe even launching your own chapter if you serve HR professionals anywhere in the country. You can find out more about that at hrhotseat.com. And of the social platforms, I am most active by far on LinkedIn. So I invite anybody to connect with me there, and that could be the beginning of a pretty fantastic relationship.
It's great. 5 years ago, no LinkedIn. Now it's the most.
Go figure.
Erich, I can't thank you enough. You're an absolute incredible human being, and it is an honor and a pleasure to know you and continue to build a great relationship with you. And I really look forward to talking to you again soon, my friend.
I really appreciate that, Luke. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Thank you, sir.
For more information, please visit truecomparepeo.com.